Thank you so much, Ceciah, for joining us, Women in the Law. I was wondering if you could please introduce yourself.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me. My name's Ceciah Lucero. I am a deputy district attorney here in Riverside County. I work just a few blocks away from UCR, actually, down the street. I have been a deputy district attorney for almost 7 years now. I'm currently assigned to our sexual assault and child abuse unit. Um, I went straight to this job basically from law school. So it's the only, I guess, legal career that I've known. Um, I'm from Riverside County originally. I grew up elementary, middle, and high school in Riverside County. Went up to the Bay Area for undergrad and law school, but always wanted to come back down to my hometown and be part of this community. So, yeah, I'm familiar with the area.
Perfect, thank you. And I was wondering if you could elaborate more on your where you studied from undergrad and like what major you pursued and any communities that you were a part of during that time.
Yeah, so I went to UC Berkeley for undergrad. I was a political science major. That kind of just fell into my lap in high school when I figured out that I was like horrible at math and science. And I was like, well, what else am I going to do? Um, I was a pretty strong reader and I was into writing, and just naturally, I feel like poli sci is kind of the most common major that you kind of hear going from high school into college. So that was my major in college. In terms of any sort of organizations or anything like that, I was in a sorority. That was, a lot of fun, something that I really enjoyed looking back on now. But apart from that, extracurriculars, I did do for one semester. They had I guess kind of like the equivalent of the Latino Pre-Law Society. They had one in at Berkeley, and that
Mhm.
was a pretty cool experience. I only did it for a semester, but they had like a partnership with Centro Legal de la Raza in Oakland, and so they actually had students, just college students who were part of the organization, go over to their office in Oakland, and we actually got to help out with some hands-on experience. So I just did that for a semester, and it was very enlightening, but something that I kind of quickly learned was not something that I wanted to pursue, like in terms of a legal career, that sort of area of the law. We did a lot of like housing things during the
Mhm.
semester. Um, Legal stuff related to housing, assisting the attorneys there. And I'm trying to think, but apart from that, I wasn't involved in any other sort of pre-law society. I did work part-time at Berkeley for all 4 years that I was there as well. I did a on-campus job, work study. I don't know if they have that at UCR. I think most of the UCs do, but
Mhm.
um, I had worked at the gym for all 4 years. Yeah, so it was nice having that flexibility doing the work study, kind of picking up shifts whenever I wanted. But I did that through the 4 years. But apart from that, no other sort of extracurriculars.
Okay, thank you. And then after following up undergrad, I wanted to talk about your LSAT experience and how that was like for studying.
Yeah, so I did my LSAT studying right after my junior year of college, or the summer of junior year going into senior year. And I actually took, I can't remember the company name, but I did take an in-person course, and it was actually at UCR for the summer. Um, there was about maybe like 20 other students there that were taking this course that you had to pay for, of course. And off the top of my head, I couldn't remember the what company it was. I know they have so many nowadays, but it was one of the popular ones.
Mhm.
Um, and my studying literally just consisted of whatever the course material contained. They do give you a lot of like books, and on top of, attending the lectures and them teaching you, how to study for the LSAT, we had homework that we had to do too. Um, so I did that during the summer, and it actually continued on into once I went back up to Berkeley for schooling, to start my senior year, I had continued the class over because I think there was kind of some overlap in the class of when I started from over my summer. My summers I would spend here in Riverside and then I would go
Mm-hmm.
back up. So
Mm-hmm.
there was a little bit of overlap, and I remember taking the course up in Berkeley as well for some time before actually taking the LSAT. This is something that I've shared before, but I actually took the LSAT 2 times. Um, I was not happy with my first score. It wasn't that I wasn't happy with it, but I just knew I could do better.
Mm-hmm.
So after taking it the first time, which was probably, I can't remember what month it was, but it was shortly starting my senior year,
Mm-hmm.
I got the results back and I just felt like I could do better. And so I wanted to take it again. Um, but this is where I definitely messed up and would recommend to anyone listening, don't do what I did because I was in full like senioritis mode going
Mm-hmm.
into my senior year and was really not focusing on studying. I was, just trying to party and enjoy my senior year. So I definitely didn't take my studying the second time around very seriously. I didn't take like a whole new course, I don't think. I can't remember. I
Mm-hmm.
might have self-studied that second time after I still had some materials left, but regardless, I ended up taking it a second time and just walking out of that exam and not feeling good about it. So, I ended up canceling my score because back then they would average if you took the LSAT more times, more than once, they would average your score and that's what got reported to your the law schools that you applied to.
Mm-hmm.
And I just didn't feel like my score was, I felt like it probably would have been lower, so I ended up canceling it without actually knowing what I did,
Mm-hmm.
how I scored. But yeah, in terms of studying, I definitely would recommend to, any students to try not to self-study and do a course if you can. Um, the only caveat to that is that now I understand that they don't do the logic games as a portion of the LSAT.
Mm-hmm.
If they were still doing that, I would be like 100% everyone needs to take a class and learn how to do those logic games because that was something I struggled with so much. It was like my hardest portion of the exam. And I hated it. So now that they don't have it, I think that maybe that might I think it would just come down to someone if they want to self-study, as opposed to taking a class. But if you do have the means to take a class, like I would definitely recommend it because you're learning from people who, have taken the LSAT multiple times for fun. Like the people who teach that, like they just love the LSAT. They're like total nerds,
Mm-hmm.
and they just teach you like how to kind of do your best on it. And they've taken it a million times, so they know best. So I would definitely recommend studying that way.
Perfect. Thank you. And then I wanted to talk about your law school application. How was that for you?
Yeah, the law school application, it was actually pretty similar from my experience to applying to undergrad colleges as well. I didn't find too much of a difference apart from really spending a lot more time on my personal statements. Um, I Each of the law schools will have different prompts for their personal statements. And I had noticed that, back when I was an undergrad applying to colleges, I would kind of copy and paste somewhat of the same personal statement. But I found that that was not the case for law schools because they have kind of specific prompts. And so you really wanted to make sure that you were answering the prompt and not kind of recycling or reusing, the same personal statement, kind
Mm-hmm.
of tailoring it to the specific school that you're applying to just because it's easy to see if you're just copying and pasting from a different application process, and so I definitely made sure to spend a lot of time on my personal statement. When I was applying to law schools, they told me, hey, they're gonna look at your application like super quick, not even, I don't know how long they get, 5, 10 minutes to review it. So they're looking at your GPA, they're looking at your, your transcripts, they're looking at your LSAT score, and then they're gonna be looking at your personal statement, kind of what sets you apart, the kind of feeling that they get from your personal statement. So what I always recommend to applicants is, yeah, spend some time on that personal statement for sure, because that's gonna what's gonna kind of set you apart. Um, Obviously, we're not determined like we when they're looking at your GPA, they're just looking at a number, but there's so much more to us as we're applying. So you really want to make sure that that shines through in your personal statement.
Perfect. Thank you. And then we wanted to talk about what your law school experience was like.
Yeah, I you might have heard this already before, Justin, but my law school experience, gosh, the first year was rough. Um I think that, if you make it to law school, you've earned your place to be there, you've studied, you've done all of the hard things that it takes to get there. Um, but it was definitely a hit to the ego when you're in a room filled with, people that are just as smart, if not smarter than you, from all of these impressive backgrounds and everything. And one of the things about law school, I went to UC Hastings. It's called UC Law of San Francisco now. It was previously Hastings, but if this law school that you go to is like Hastings, they grade on a curve, which means basically that the professors only give out a certain number of A's, a certain number of, A minuses, a certain number of B pluses, B's.
Hmm.
So it was very competitive my first year. I found that people weren't as necessarily helpful to study. They didn't really necessarily want to study together. So it was important to kind of find people that you could trust. It was just a competitive environment. And that coupled with just learning how to study for law school is different than any other type of schooling that you've ever received. Undergrad, high school, the cases that you have to read for law school, it's kind of like a completely new language, a new way of thinking. And so it was a struggle for me my first year, definitely. But, I was able to find good mentors, older students who I trusted, who I could go to for help. And that really helped me, through my first year. And it definitely got so much easier. Um, the second year and the third year were, kind of night and day compared to your first year, but that was a little
Hmm.
bit about how I experienced my first year at Hastings.
Perfect. Thank you. And then I also wanted to know what you did outside of law school that further pushed you into the career you have now.
So the law school that I went to I went to a full-time program, and that school did not allow you to have any sort of jobs outside of working. Your job was you're a student full-time.
Hmm.
And I know that a lot of law schools don't allow you to work, you know what I mean? So in terms of what I did outside of law school, like I wasn't working or anything like that. Like my main law school experience was definitely focused on my classes. But with that said, before I actually went to law school, when I was still in college, I did like a little summer internship here at the DA's office in Riverside County,
Hmm.
just as a college student. And I kind of wanted to see, like, hey, I'm planning to go to law school, but, and I think I want to be a DA, but kind of like, is this for me? What does it really entail? So in college during one summer, I spent a few weeks here at the DA's office in Riverside, and that's kind of what planted the seed where I was like, oh, I think I would be interested in being a DA, going into criminal law. And so in law school, I really tailored the classes that I took to criminal law specific to kind of just help me because I already knew that that's where my interest was going to be. In my law school in particular, and all of the law schools, you'll hear the term clinics. Law schools
Hmm.
have clinics, which are kind of like internships, but they're done, you get like school credit for doing the internships.
Hmm.
And so, my second semester of my second year was when I did a clinic. It was a criminal law clinic where they paired us with a DA's office, a nearby local DA's office. In my case, it was Alameda County, um, up in the Bay Area. And I did that for a semester to kind of see, oh, this is a different DA's office here in the Bay. How do they do things? And I spent a semester doing there instead of classes. So
Hmm.
I got law school credit for the semester that I was, doing the clinic, but you kind of do that full time instead of taking any classes. So, that was something that kind of better helped me prepare and really um, just helped me understand like, oh, this is something that I definitely want to do. I've seen a different county, how they do things here. I do like the work, and that's kind of what further drove me to really focus in on being a DA.
Perfect. Thank you. And then what does your everyday life look like as a district attorney?
Yeah, so right now, I think your life as a district attorney definitely varies depending on what assignment you're in.
Hmm.
Um, right now, currently, since I have been with the office for almost 7 years now, I'm doing child abuse, sexual assault, child abuse cases. I have my own cases, basically, about 50 cases that are all mine to handle to prep Typically, I would say Monday through Friday, I'm in court in the mornings almost every day, handling my cases. They're at different stages of criminal proceedings. Um, so for the most part, in the mornings, I'm in court every day. And then in the afternoons, typically is when I have office time, to catch up on things, look at my cases for the next day, prepare things for jury trial. I also do a lot of what we call meet and greets with victims. So I meet with the victims on my cases. Typically, a lot of my victims are minors, so I'll be meeting them with their parents or their guardians, just kind of getting to know them, that sort of thing. Developing a good relationship with victims is really important with these types of cases that I handle. So I'm not meeting with victims every day, but I would say on a weekly basis almost.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, that's kind of what my day to day looks like is like mostly in court in the mornings and then working on my cases in my office in the afternoons. Dealing with the public, I do that a lot. Um, I think criminal law is very specific and it's kind of what you see on TV in terms of like when it comes to criminal law shows, you see the attorneys in the courtroom.
Mhm.
That's what criminal law is about. We're always in the courtroom. We're dealing with the public versus compared to other types of law in the legal field. They really don't go to court. Like even civil litigators like are in court, maybe not even monthly, if that. I have a lot of friends who do, civil litigation and just comparing it's like night and day. So um, my job specifically is, very court heavy. You're in court, you're in front of judges, you're in front of juries all the time. So definitely have to be comfortable with public speaking if you're in criminal law.
Right. Thank you. And then I wanted to know why did you choose to work where you are now in terms of like why public versus private and how you came to that conclusion?
Yeah, that's a great question. I will say that a majority of law students, when you're going into law school, don't know what kind of law they want to go into. Don't know if they want to do public, don't know if they want to do private. That's super, super common. I went into law school kind of already with a seed planted that I wanted to be a DA and going into criminal law.
Hmm.
So I kind of had a very narrow path in that sense that I was like, criminal law is the most interesting to me, and that's something that I'm going to focus on in law school. But I will say I'm more of the exception because most people don't go into law school kind of knowing what kind of law that they want to get into.
Hmm.
Um, with that said, how did I pick it? I think it was just doing the internship when I was a college student and being like, I like this, let me just stick with it. Um, and but what I would recommend is definitely spend in college for students, in college trying to, if you think that you have an interest in a particular legal field, whether it be, family law, immigration, civil litigation, I mean, taxes, real estate, whatever it is, early and often try to put yourself out there to kind of shadow someone who's in that field or do like a quick internship, even if it's just for a day to see their day to day, because it's going to look so, so different from what one attorney does to another attorney. Um, I knew that I enjoyed, public speaking and I like being in court around people. So I just knew that that was something that was a better fit for me as opposed to being an attorney that's got a, quote unquote, office job where they're just doing, primarily a lot of research and writing heavy day to day,
Hmm.
workload. That's what their day to day workload looks like. That is just not something that I know I wouldn't be happy in. So, that's kind of why I ended up, I guess, latching on to the criminal law field a little bit more. So, I'm trying to think. Can you repeat that question? Because I had another point, but now I forgot it.
Yeah, of course. So just why did you choose to work where you are now in terms of like why public versus like
Versus
private?
private.
Yeah.
Thank you. That reminded me because it's something that is important for me to kind of share, and that's the financial aspect of law school and whether you decide to go public versus private. Because I knew I wanted to be a DA and I was going to do public interest, I knew that within 10 years of staying with that job, my loans could get forgiven. I could apply for the public loan forgiveness program, which is something I'm still, working towards right now. I've got about 3 years left, but um knowing that, I kind of had this idea of, hey, I'm gonna, maximize my loans in law school. I'm not gonna worry about, paying rent, whatever. Like, I'm not gonna stress about it. I'm just gonna take out all the loans that I need to because I know I want to be a DA and I know I'm gonna do it for at least 10 years so that my loans could get forgiven. So that wasn't necessarily something that I was too stressed about back then.
Mhm.
Now fast forward 7 years later and there's so much litigation going on with the loans currently, um, that I think it is important to note because I had one of my best friends go directly into the private sector right after law school, and he was extremely smart about it because he was doing big law, he was making really good civil money, working private. Typically, in the private field, you do have the potential to make a lot more than you do in the public field. He was working private and he was just really smart, paid off his loans within 3 years. I think he was, eating top ramen every day, but paid off his loans and, doesn't have any loans that he has to worry about now. So looking back, I'm like, oh wow, that he was, he had a game plan and he was able to pay off his loans. So now, I think I think when you're applying to law school, your focus is just, hey, let me get in, let me figure out, what kind of law I want to do, and which is super important. But law school is such a huge financial commitment, that I always tell students, don't go into it, knowing that you want to be a lawyer and that you're passionate about being a lawyer. But just know it is a financial commitment, and not something that I would, if you're half-hearted about it, then I would suggest, hey, maybe try something else or be sure that you do your shadowing and your internships to see if it's something that you really want to do just because, um, you know, fast forward 7 years now, I've been working in the work field and stuff, and obviously, got bills to pay, loans, to pay off, that sort of thing. Like you do start thinking about finances a lot
Mhm.
more than you did when you were in law school. So, just something to consider, the whole private versus public sector, that sort of thing.
Perfect. Thank you. My last question is what advice would you give to any pre-law undergraduate students hoping to be in your position one day?
Um, I guess, do you mean like being in my position like as a DA or just like as an attorney, like students that want to be an attorney?
Let's be specific and be a DA.
A DA? Okay. I think being a DA is a little bit more specific
Mhm.
compared to, any other type of law that you want to do. Um, I would say by and large at the DA's office, when you're applying to DA's offices, grades don't necessarily, you don't need to be a straight A student. You don't need to have gone to the top law school, like definitely not. I think your work ethic and your personality, and your drive is something that DA's offices or public defender's offices too, anywhere in the criminal law field, are definitely going to prioritize over your grades, over your LSAT scores or whatever it is, you know what I mean? Um, this is like something that I kind of like joked about before, but I'm like, yeah, C's get degrees, and as long as you pass the bar, um, they being a DA or being in the criminal field, from my experience, it's not about your grades necessarily, and it's not necessarily about your test scores at all. There's a lot more that's comes with the job. I think that you know, um, people who hire for these positions definitely look for, and it's a lot more to personality, your drive, your interests in public interest, that sort of thing. So, I guess my advice for people who would want to be a DA, or I guess even if you want to do criminal defense as well, would be do internships, do your externships over the summer, go to DA's offices. Um, Try to see it geographically too, where it is that you want to be, when you start your legal career. Because when
Mhm.
I was my 1L, my summer, I spent my summer at the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office thinking, hey, let me try this out. Um, and although I had a great experience, I just quickly learned, like, nope, this is way too big. Los Angeles isn't for me. Let me try Riverside. So I did that for my 2L summer. So I think that if you're interested in criminal law, that sort of thing, you don't have to, if you know, like, oh, I'm super gung-ho about staying in Riverside and living there forever, then by all
Hmm.
means, like, please, spend your summers interning here and do everything. But if you have, other interests and want to geographically want to experience other things, like, I would recommend, trying different counties as well to see how they do things, because the job also, is a little bit different from county to county and how they do things. So I think that that would primarily be like my biggest recommendation is just be sure that you're on top of the internships, the externships, the clinics during the semester, just so you can get that hands-on experience and really be able to say, yeah, this is something that I want to do, or hey, I had a bad experience here. I definitely don't want to go back there. I think the most heartbreaking thing to me is when I hear of people who are just miserable on the job, once
Hmm.
they paid so much money for law school, and they're starting their job and they're like, oh, this is not what I expected, I don't like it, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
um in order to kind of minimize that, then I always recommend do the internships, the externships early on and as often as you can. That way you actually know like what it is that you want to do.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And that was all the questions we had. So I just want to say thank you so much for meeting with women in the law and sharing your knowledge. And hopefully we get to see you around campus and have you on one of our meetings.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to, answer any questions that maybe members, if they have any follow-up questions, like feel free to share my email. I don't have any, I love mentoring, I love is speaking with students who are interested in going to law school, and keeping it real with them, so it's something that I do enjoy doing. So please feel free to reach out at any time. And yeah, thank you for having me.